You are listening to the Cookbook Love podcast with Maggie Green, episode number 289.
Welcome to the Cookbook Love podcast, a podcast that celebrates cookbook readers, buyers, collectors, writers, and clubs. And now your host, cookbook author, culinary dietitian, and cookbook writing coach, Maggie Green.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. How's everybody doing today? As always, very excited to be here to share with you another episode with a wonderful cookbook writer and author. But before we dive in, if you have a friend who loves to collect, read, or is thinking about writing a cookbook, would you be willing to share this podcast with them? I am always actively seeking new listeners to the podcast and also thanking you for being here. I know many of you have been here for a while. Some of you are new listeners. Thank you for reaching out and emailing me with questions about the podcast, questions about writing cookbooks, pitching your ideas for being a interviewee on the podcast. And as always, very excited to hear from all of you. But share this with a friend. I think sometimes we're reluctant to do that or we forget to do that. So that is my ask for you today. Today on the podcast, I have an interview with Rowena Scherer. Rowena grew up in Malaysia, and some of her fondest memories were cooking with her family. But it wasn't until she was on a vacation with her own children that she saw the joy on their faces while they took a cooking class, but at the same time struggled to cut an onion. That was when Rowena knew something needed to change. As a result, she left her job on Wall Street to create a business with an experiential way to teach cooking skills to kids while also giving them bite-sized lessons in world geography, history, and culture. Today on the podcast, we talk with Rowena about her business Eat to Explore, her new book, Taste of the World, and her desire and intention to help children not only learn the life skills of cooking, but how to become good global citizens. So without further delay, let's dive into this interview with Rowena Scherer. Hi, Rowena. Welcome to the Cookbook Love podcast.
Thank you, Maggie, for having me.
Very excited to be here. Your brand new book. Can't wait to have you tell everybody about it. But before we do, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Perfect. So I'm Rowena Scherer. I'm the founder and CEO of Eat to Explore. It's a food and cultural experiential cooking kit. I'm trying to unite families to enjoy the fun of cooking, dining, and learning about the world together.
Yeah. And you came to this idea for Eat to Explore and the work that you do through a lot of travel. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what led to this aha moment for you and what led you to open the business that you have?
So it is a really fun story.
Yeah.
So I'm originally from Malaysia, a small town called Muar. And I was very lucky to have an opportunity to leave the country for the first time and went to New Zealand for college. And that's kind of where I started to travel around the world and my food culture and the cultural learning began. But growing up, my mom always made us cook every Sunday. It's kind of a routine. We clean our room and then we make lunch together as a family. And that's how I started to build my knife skills, my cooking skill. And even when I was like 10 or 11, when I'm hungry, I'll make my own meal. And I love to explore the Malaysian cuisine, which is a very unique and yet very rich in culture as well, and full of flavors. And then, of course, I journeyed into the business world, left college, started working in finance. I was very lucky that I landed at JP Morgan in Singapore, and they gave me an opportunity to come to the States for the first time. And the first place I came to was New York City. So very lucky in that sense. And but that was my first life before I founded Eat to Explore. And then, throughout many years later, working in finance, having two children, as you raised them in New York, kind of, gave me a pause on like, how to be a good parent, right?
Yeah.
As all busy parents know, and mom knows, we multitask in everything. And so we're like, the worst thing is to have an injury and have to take your kids to the ER.
Yeah.
And so I always like, kids, do not come to the kitchen. No touching knives. Don't do this. And I just want to like get your homework done, play their music, do all this. They're like overscheduled kids. And then one trip to Thailand, and they were 9 and 12. And we were doing a family cooking class. And they literally, the two of them look at me and say, Mom, what do you want me to do with this onion? And it was kind of a wake up call for me, because I was looking at them and not disappointed at them, but more at myself. Like, how did I get to this point where I raised 2 kids? And when my mom at that point already have kids that can make a meal, and I have 2 kids who have no idea how to dice an onion or know what to do with it. So that was that trip when I kind of realized I need to teach my kids, right, the life skill of cooking and life skill of enjoying food. They were very good with travel and have great palate, but they missed that cooking for themselves, exploring the food and culture part. So I kind of came back from that trip saying, I need to do something different than what I've been doing, right? I learned, I've traveled everywhere, I lived in many countries. I have this wealth of experience that I would love to share. And I also reflect back on what I love doing all the time. It's cooking, it's about food, it's about traveling, it's about learning about the country and the culture, learning the history, and actually it's about educating kids. And kids is our next generation that needs to be better. They need to be global citizens. And we need to start now. And I came back, really excited. I went to my partners in finance and said, I need to take a sabbatical. I need to make this and try it. If it doesn't work out, I'm going to come back, tails between my legs and go back to finance. But I started Eat to Explore first in 2017 as a meal kit initially. And then I kind of pivoted to our current model, which is a cooking kit. So it's a lot more educational. It's an experiential box. I do curate the spices and sauces, and so that is included in the box. But you have to go and buy your own groceries, which to me is a learning moment. Going to grocery stores, it's a great learning moment, right? And teaching moment rather. And so it gets you to want to try different food for kids who are picky eaters. And because if you cook, you will try to eat it because you make an effort, right? And also learning about culture, learning to be sensitive about other culture, and what a fun way to do it.
Yeah.
So sorry, a long-winded story.
No, that's great. And I think I'm fascinated that your mother had the routine every Sunday. You cleaned your room and you cooked together. Because, a lot of times we hear about our kids, they don't want to clean their room, but how smart to make it like a double thing.
I agree. And the funny thing is, once it's a routine, it's like every routine, it's hard to kick it off.
Yes.
But once you have it as a routine, I didn't even think twice. Like
100%.
I know never to like plan anything with my friends.
Yes.
It's like my morning from 9 to 2 on Sunday is to clean my room and then go to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And then we just and it's such a great experience. Now that I think back, I'm very good at cleaning. My room's always clean. Like, the house is always clean. It's like,
and you knew how to cook.
It's terrible.
Yeah. And you mentioned, and this is a life skill. Cooking for yourself is a skill that we can all learn. And it is a skill that supports our life in so many different ways.
I know. And we don't have home economics at school anymore.
Yeah.
There used to be home economics.
I know. I think it's unfortunate.
I agree. I mean, it's good to know the science and the, history and everything, but what really matters is like, how do you support yourself? How do you and life skills is one of the things that don't teach anymore at school.
And also, I mean, I think cooking for yourself also feeds into the economy of your home in terms of the budget and the money and buying things and
health-wise.
100%.
Health-wise.
Right. It's so I think it's a very important life skill. And I just love that your mother tied those two together. If I could raise my kids over again, I would perhaps look at a way to tie the two together also. I was in the kitchen a lot. They were in the kitchen a lot. They do know how to feed themselves and cook for themselves, but the cleaning the room, that depended on the kid. They were some were
It's
better at it than
true.
others.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
so that's
agree.
so neat. So your business Eat to Explore, then the experiential box where people get the seasonings and the sauces or spices and the instructions. They do it together with their children. Yeah.
Yeah, and we actually provide explorer booklet where you learn geography, history, music, art. There's playlists by country. We have suggested movie that you can watch as a family. So it's like a whole experience. But I want to make it easy.
Yeah.
So there's no excuse, right? Like if you want a routine, you want to be easy, and all parents and families are so busy these days that I want to make it easy where, you get to explain it and enjoy it as a family and have already researched materials to learn together.
Yeah. Wonderful. Amazing. I'm going to have to check that out. I've got a little niece and keep thinking that'd be maybe something fun as she gets older for my nephew and her to
Thank
do it.
you.
So
Awesome.
fun to do it there with her. Okay. So, but what we're here to talk about today also is not just this, well, it's this whole concept behind it, but when you realized your children went to this cooking class and they're like, what do we do with this onion? And you took it then to another level where you're now teaching people these recipes and these concepts through a book, A Taste of the World. What bridge the gap between the business and Eat to Explore and the book? How did you go from one? It kind of makes sense. To me, you went from one to the other, but what really happened that you were able to do that?
Sure. I mean, Eat to Explore is still around. It's live. It is a business that is my primary business. I call the cookbook my sidekick in a way. And the reason being, a lot of my customers love it. And because our cooking kit is not just recipes, there's also the cultural learning and everything. But when they did the recipes, which is 3 recipes per box per country, they all is like, can I have the spice ingredients recipe so we can repeat it? We want to make it as a family. So I have overwhelming requests. And I said, you know what? Instead of me giving it out and emailing in, I'm going to put it into a nice cookbook that you can keep.
Yeah.
And it's separate from the box, which is more a cultural experience, and food is just an element of it. This is purely recipes, right? So and some fun facts. So that's how it come about. So initially, probably about a year and a half ago, I sort of kind of test the market by just self-published it. And it was 100 copies were sold out in a month. And I'm like, okay, maybe there is something here that people really want to book in addition to the box as a subscription. So I found a publisher and hence the book was put together last year. And now it's going to be live at every bookstore and Barnes & Noble, Book a Million, Amazon, and your local bookstore starting February 27th.
Yeah, amazing. And that's one of the biggest differences, self-publishing journey is the distribution capacity of a traditional publisher. And the way that they can get these books into places that for self-publishing, it's not impossible, but it's a bigger barrier to jump. And I think
the quality is not that good too. The quality is hugely different.
Yeah.
Like
between your self-published book and this book.
The professionally published book is so much better.
Yeah, yeah. Did you write a cookbook proposal or did you go another avenue to?
So the easy thing was I already have a self-published book to show. Yeah. So therefore I could just take that and bring it to a publisher. So I'm also testing it a different way. So we ended up going with Collective Book Studio, who is, I'd say Angela is amazing. She's trying to change the book market. And so they were both an agent and a publisher. So,
yeah.
So it's interesting.
You answered a good question a lot of people ask, and that is, if I self-publish the book, does that exclude me from traditional publishing? And you're an example that would be a no.
Yes, exactly. It's a no, but then the difference is, and I'm still learning, is because I go through with Collectible, which is not your traditional publisher. So I still have all the rights to my books, right?
Yeah.
So I pay to get this published with them, and then we work together. It's like an agent, publisher, and ownership.
Yeah.
And I still own all the rights to the books. We work closely together. They have a distributor through Salmon & Schuster. Like I could not have done this by myself, right? As a self-publisher. It's just impossible. So that avenue, it's a world that I've never really gone through. And also, frankly, it's a sidekick. Like I said, like my main focus is doing my business. So I don't have the time to fully spend a year just doing my cookbook, right? I'm actually running my whole business
Right.
that is growing. And so this was great to have that help with some insider who knows what to do.
Yeah. And I've been seeing more and more cookbooks recently come across my desk that are in this space of really high quality, where you keep the rights and they help you with all the book layout, the design, the getting it printed, and the distribution, so that you can do what you're good at and they do what you're good at, but you still help your funds, your money helps to fund the project also, not just theirs. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So
actually, before I forget, I want to say something very unique that I kind of proud of, a little bit different of our cookbook versus other cookbooks. First of all, it's a family cookbook, right? Yeah. And also because it's catering to children, but yet it's not a kid's cookbook making pizza and pasta, right?
Yeah.
It truly is a family adult food. And I always believe in kids should eat what adults eat. Their palate is just like walking. They just need to be trained so they can be more sophisticated. But our cookbook has steps. Like every recipe has 1 to 6 steps, right? Unlike most recipe books, it's just a lot of text. We actually have images along the way that helps children, especially children who are more visual, to know, oh, I completed this step. I completed the next step.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's talk about the book then. When you talk about the children, like what ages of children did you have in mind when you wrote this book?
So I always say it started from 5. I always find cooking as a family, 5 to 12 is ideal because at 5-year-old, you have the nice skills. So you can actually participate. But then I look back and say, you know what, if you have a 2-year-old in the family too, you can, and all our steps have like chef hats of 1 to 3 hats. And the 1 hat is where they stir, they roll meatball, they're not touching any knives, right? So you can get the 2-year-old who's sitting there in their little seat, be participating as well and be present, right? So there are steps where a 2-year-old or a 2-year-old can do, but ideally it's 5 to 12 where truthfully those age group, I call them golden years because they want to spend time with you. They desperately want their parents to spend time with them. When they're teenagers, they are like, okay, I want to be socializing with my friend, right? So you need to know when to have that routine where you're connected and they want to be with you. Because otherwise you're like an uphill battle because they want to spend time with their friends. So start when they are sort of younger before they turn into teenager. And then I also like with my own kids because I started when they were 9, 12.
Yeah.
Now, as we cook together, not only they learn the life skill, they connected with us. So when my daughter and my son go through, high school years and teenagers, which is tough.
Exactly.
They have an open conversation, right? They know when to get to me when they have issues. Instead of seeking social media for responses, they come to us because we have already developed it.
Yeah. Yeah. And the kitchen is a beautiful place to do it because you're really serving 2 purposes because you're preparing food for a meal. And then you get to eat together. And I think a lot of families understand the value of sitting down to the table together. You're just adding this layer of cooking on top of it. Plus, the other thing that you add is the culinary experiences from different countries. What is it about all these different countries? What does it add to all the meal and the cooking when you incorporate food from other countries?
Actually, the fun part about incorporating other countries is, first of all, geography, but history. I'm a history buff. I love history. I love understanding how food travels, like the spice route and how it now influenced, different countries, the immigrations that happened when and how, like Peru, right? You had their national dish is a combination of Chinese and Japanese. I mean, yet, it's Peruvian national dish. And the same thing with UK. You got a little bit of Indian influence. And so there's so much of history that dictates the cuisine that we know now. And prime example is Malaysia. We got a mix of Indian, Chinese, and Malay. So, and the reason is the British brought, when we were a colony, like they brought in all these different country immigrants, and that influenced. So
yeah. What about the flavors?
that's what I wanted to teach.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the exposure to different ingredients, what does that do for the children?
Yes. Every recipe, so we put in, actually we create a fun fact. So I want them to know what is rosemary, what is saffron, what is vanilla come from, right? And knowing kids, they're like a sponge. When they learn and they understand why, then it make that meal so much more interesting. Instead of just already prepared, they have no idea what's in it, right? When if they learn and they're making it, they're like, oh, zucchini is this, and oh, this is that. And also in that meal become a full plate of colorful lessons.
Yeah. And you mentioned also that one of the things that you really believe that these culinary experiences with our children fosters is a feeling and a sense of empathy. I would like for you to maybe expand on that a little bit, because I think we all probably feel like sometimes that's what our world needs a little bit more of. And what is it about the kitchen and cooking with children, food from around the world? How does that develop the empathy?
So I find kitchen, like you said, it's a safe space, right? It's really a safe space where you should make it open conversation, and they can bring up what they hear from friends. And one final example is Ramadan, right? If you're Muslim, you do fast for a month and you go to school. And if you have friends who are religiously Muslim, you see all of a sudden they're not eating or drinking during the day. Be respectful. I just remember growing up in Malaysia where we have a lot of Malay, where we try not to eat in front of them or drink in front of them. Just create the empathy of, I know it's religious holiday and that, we will not, tempt you, right? So it's kind of nice to know that. And the other thing is also like, we have so much going on in the world, right? In Israel and Ukraine and all that. And kids know what's happening.
Yeah.
And what better place than having that conversation at dinner table, making a meal and really celebrate not just, the negative news, but the country as a whole has a huge, rich history and the people are beautiful. And so you can actually talk about it and make positive things out of learning.
Yeah. And I think also putting, current things that are going on in our world in the context of, world history, that this is, a slice of time here in this time that we're living in. And that how throughout history, so many different people all around the world have been through similar things, maybe even tragically, worse, sometimes better, but that's what history is, this movement of people through time, through cultures, living together, trying to live together, sometimes not living that great together. And opening up this, it just gives a little bit more of a long view, I think, about how history moves truly through people, all around the world.
And food.
Yeah.
Through people and food. A lot of the food that we thought is from that country, it's
not really from, right. It's come from somewhere else.
I know. It's from somewhere else that you kind of modify. And all of a sudden you think of it as that cuisine, but hey, it's actually a blend and historically explain why.
Yeah. So I think there's always this interesting conversation then about like France, a national cuisine, Italy, national cuisine, China, very much. But when it comes to the U.S., how much of this food was brought here from other countries? And that's really, I think, the beauty of what we have. So many different flavors. I bet in New York, how many different types of restaurants do you think you probably have access to?
A lot.
Yeah.
I mean, between here and Queens and Brooklyn, every little town, there's so many. Koreatown, and then you got the Indian town.
Yeah.
It's like, we're very lucky in New York.
Yes,
but, I want to extend beyond just tasting, making it, right?
Yeah.
Learning how it happens. And kids actually will appreciate all the little parts that make that meal.
Yeah. Yeah. So in working with children, when you're working with them and even with your own kids, where have the biggest light bulbs gone on? Like, what have you really seen them respond to the most? And if someone were diving into your book, where might they start this journey with the kids?
So I delve back to my time with my mom. So I make it into a routine. So when they were younger and I starting out this business, I tested every recipes with them on Sunday lunch. So I thought I'll relive my old childhood and do it with my kids. And so we did it. It's a struggle beginning because they're like, Mom, on a Sunday, I want to spend time in the kitchen. But once they got into the routine, they're like, okay, fine, I'll do it. Right? And down forward, now my son's in college. My daughter's a senior, going to college soon. We have few traditions. We make Chinese dumplings together for Chinese New Year. We cook Thanksgiving together, and they all make their own separate side dishes or dishes. And so they are excited. They love the traditions. And now, even though we don't cook weekly, we cook once a year, a few times, and that's enough. And they both know how to cook. They know how to feed themselves. And I'm very proud to say they are very confident and independent.
Yeah.
So my son, took a gap year, was in Dublin and Singapore on his own. He really lived on his own. And my daughter was in Shanghai for 2 months in the summer on their own. So I feel not just the food, but because they learn about the culture, their confidence in the kitchen, it built the confidence for them to want to explore a different country. And maybe it's a little scary at the beginning, but they're like, oh, I know about this country. I learned about this country. I want to go to this country, right? And that is like baby steps and make them into a true global citizen.
Yeah. And that, I think anytime any of us face something that we maybe initially feel a little bit of fear about it, like that's going to be a little scary to do that. It's going to be a little scary to do this. If we can do that thing, it just grows us as a person. And it's the same in the kitchen. If you haven't tried food from a certain country and you're like, oh gosh, I've got to get these ingredients, or I've got to maybe learn this cooking technique or the way that they do things, when you do it and you taste the food that you've actually made, it grows you as a person. And then that becomes part of your repertoire. It's like, oh, I can do this, and the confidence builds. And so I always think that any fear that we face, so whether it be with travel, with cooking, with trying something new, it's an opportunity to grow ourselves into a new way.
I agree.
Thinking or doing things. And I'm sure for you, writing a book, even self-publishing the first time when you did, it's a new thing, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And if you don't take that first step, you never know.
Right.
And that has always been my policy. It's like, you got to try it. It's scary at the beginning, but once you develop the skill, and it builds confidence. Yeah. And cooking, by the way, it's like building confidence, right? It's scary at the beginning. The more you do it, the easier it gets.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Not hard at all.
Yeah.
It's just wanting to do it. And then you take that to the next level. You do it better and better.
Yeah. And then you're not even thinking about it. Like you said, it becomes part of a routine.
Yeah. You're like, what's in the fridge I can make? And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I got it.
Yeah. So if someone is buying the book, where might you recommend they jump in? Let's suppose that they haven't had a lot of exposure to cuisine of other countries, but they really want to spend time in the kitchen with their children. They see this as an opportunity to learn and to do all the things that you've talked about, from history to culture to flavors and tastes. Where might they jump in?
I always said, get the kids involved, because then the whole journey will be better. So bring out the cookbook, go through them and say, oh, so which country you want to go to first, right? Take that back. Which continent you want to go to first? Because we do group them by continent. And I feel that it's very important to learn about all the continents we have. And then once you go to the continent, like, okay, which country you want to explore? And if you look at all the continent page, we actually show a map, so you can see geographically where it is. And then once you go to that country, and then you kind of then decide which recipes you want. Most of the recipes, you can get the basic ingredients from any grocery stores. The spices, unfortunately, sometimes it's hard to find. And what's unique about Eat to Explore is we actually do provide this, like, you can get just the spices and sauces to try it out, right? And I always give the best example is fish sauce. It's one of those things where if you buy in a grocery store, it's a big bottle, right? And you only need a dash. or your sumac spice where you need a pinch and you buy a big bottle, right?
Yeah.
So there are things that, you don't need to buy a big bottle, and it's good to just try it. And we do sell them at transport, just so you know. But other than that, go grocery shopping. Easy to just pick it basic stuff. Oh, and then most of our recipes have vegetarian and gluten-free options.
Yeah.
So you can, instead of the meat, replace it with like vegan protein and vegetables.
Yeah. And I see you have some allergen little icons here that tell people, like I'm looking at the Japanese cabbage pancake, dairy-free and nut-free. You also mentioned how prep time and cook time. Now, not all cookbooks offer that, but that's nice that people can see, like this one would take about 50 minutes from the time you start till the time you finish.
Especially the one that, where you got braised and marinade. It's nice to know that does take some time, and to take note of if you want to make that, make sure you do it, plan it ahead.
For some reason, I'm seeing opportunities for this to even expose people to food of other cultures, even if they don't have children.
I agree. I know. Trust me, this cookbook can be addressed to any people of all ages.
Yes. And especially maybe if they are going to college, if they haven't had a ton of experience in the kitchen. But when you go to college, I think you're usually exposed to a lot of people from a lot of different cultures. Most universities, the ones my kids went to, they were, and I thought that was always really neat. So like my son had next door neighbors from India, and he could always smell them cooking. And he always kind of wondered what they were cooking because he was always curious about the food. So I thought, well, if this book could introduce people to the basics of some Indian dishes, things that they can readily see where, the ingredients that go into it, the spices that go into it. And sometimes on university campuses too, there are grocery stores that are stocked well with ingredients.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is truly, at the Taste of the World, it's for all ages. Now, sometimes the images might be a little more kiddie.
Yeah, that's right. But there are good photos of the dishes, and
right.
Yeah. No, I think that it has the steps. Let me tell everybody, you have a whole section on how to prep the ingredients. And so you're not just telling people like, give me a cup of chopped butternut squash. I'm totally making this up. You might actually kind of walk them through the process of maybe preparing that. Like an onion here, you want to peel it. If you use a grater, you can shred it. You actually add some things that maybe are not as intuitive to people that are learning how to cook.
Right. So exactly right. Like a lot of cookbooks just say chop onion. So what we are assuming, again, it was catered for kids, right? You need to tell them the steps. But then again, adults too, like young adults who have never cooked before. This is a great book because you almost start from scratch and visualize it and then actually doing it with the description.
Yeah, and you have the prep, it looks like, for most of the ingredients that are on the ingredient list. Like it says for the tomato, you want to dice it. For this other recipe for the kale, rinse it, separate the center ribs from the leaves, discard them, and roughly chop the leaves. So, that's really nice that it's that descriptive and instructive.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. And so I see opportunities for anyone who's listening, and even for myself, if you're looking for a basic cookbook with taste of the world, that this could fill the spot for anybody that's wanting to learn how to cook these ingredients. And like you said, I don't think just in glancing at it that the illustrations are too. I don't think it screams like young children. I really don't.
Well, it's meant to be families, right? So like with assistance, kids can learn. And I always say, don't dumb down for kids, right? Treat them with respect, like an adult.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Feel better, and they will want to step up, right?
Yeah.
So I said families of all time. It can be families of friends. It could be families of couple without kids, or it could be retired couples who are families. So any ages, it's truly is flavors of the world. I tweak it to make it a little bit simplified because sometimes it can be either too spicy or too strong. So like most of the recipes, it's not heat spice. It's just flavorful spices.
Yeah. Yeah. I thought it was interesting. You mentioned two pieces of research in this benefits of cooking global cuisine. One is that research shows that children involved in cooking make healthier food choices. This was done in 2019 by Susan B. Quelly at the University of Central Florida. Expand on that a little bit?
So that was another reason why I started the company too. I really think, again, kids, we have so many issues, and I see it in my children's friends, right? They only eat pasta, pizza, burger, chicken nuggets, right? It's so sad when the world has so much flavors, and then I have them come to my house. They'd be like, "Mrs. Scherer, what are you making?" And I think, like, they're curious, and they know whenever they come to my kitchen, I always have plenty of different kind of food. And so I feel like as a family, don't restrict them. Give them the choice. Make them part of the family cooking. And then you don't have to have separate meal, right?
Right.
You can just make one meal that everybody enjoys.
That's right.
And truly expand their palate to be, and don't complain about picky eater when all you need to do is involve them, get them, prepare and know what is in it, then it's not scary, right? When they know what puts in there and they're like, oh, I know what it looks like.
Yeah.
I will try it. So whereas if you put some, crazy colored food in their plate and they have no idea where they come from, right? It will be like, I wouldn't even try it.
Yeah. But when they can actually see it going together, it says here that it fosters better eating habits, contributes to a balanced diet, and potentially reducing the risk of long-term obesity.
I agree. And also cooking whole food, right? Mm-hmm. And cooking whole food, balance, and all our recipes is very balanced. There's always protein and not huge protein. Frankly, we only need this much protein, right? Small amount of protein, carbs, enough, not big carbs, decent portion of carbs, vegetables, and it just have that balanced meal, make it interesting. And then when you kind of like, oh, this is the food that this country eats, then children just like curious, then they will be more likely to try.
Yeah. Then the other piece of research is that cooking together is an opportunity to instill sustainable consumption habits early on by exploring local, fresh ingredients. There was a study done by the Institute for Environmental Decisions, Consumer Behavior of Zurich that conducted a study in 2014 that was the effects of involving children in meal preparation. They concluded that involving children in cooking can significantly increase their willingness to try new foods, which you just talked about, try new fruits and vegetables, which means that there's so many fruits and vegetables out there, and it's to limit it to just a few is almost like it's mind-boggling. Fostering less picky, more adventurous eaters.
Exactly.
Yeah. So your hope then is that this book will encourage people through this global cuisine to, it's better eating habits, knowing how to prepare your own food, potentially reducing the risk for long-term chronic disease, and really truly broadening the food that they'll actually consume. And think about that too when they go to college, not just even preparing for themselves, but their openness then to people from other cultures because, hey, I've had food from maybe they don't speak the same language, because I think at universities, there are still different languages sometimes spoken. Maybe the spoken language is not as fluent, but you can share simple things about food. And it's a connection point, I think, for people when they're meeting for the first time, for sure.
And you actually touched the point about, like, when you go to college, you try to make friendships, right? And suddenly you have, and at college is where you meet people from all over the world.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, like you say, oh, I know this is what you eat, right? Like you learn it at home and you're like, I appreciate it. We made it. I know what it is. And people will be like, what? Okonomiyaki? Like something that's totally out there, or Dora Wat from Ethiopia. And so it's so nice to have, it's a conversation starter.
It is a conversation starter, and it's a language all of its own.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you say, I know what Dora Wat is, and, oh, you're from Ethiopia, I'm familiar with this food, then, that just like opens a little door that you would never be able to open unless you.
I have to tell you a great story from a customer, and this is a mom, not even the child. She was taking Uber home, and then all of a sudden, have a conversation with the driver, and apparently the driver is from Ethiopia, and she was so excited because she just got out Ethiopia books, make a box and made a Dorowat with her family. And then all of a sudden, that conversation on the right back was all about the food and what she learned. And then she learned more. And she wrote us this beautiful email saying, thank you, not just for my kids, for myself.
Yeah.
That I all of a sudden learned about this, and that it was exactly what the Ethiopian driver said I should be learning. And it's all from the box. So
that's
so
amazing.
exciting.
Amazing that it had that kind of an impact on the mother.
Yeah.
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 Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. I think food is a global language. It's something we all have to eat. We don't all have to cook, but we all do need to eat. But being able to prepare our own food is a gift. And you've certainly done a great service here to help us explore cuisines of other countries with our children and for ourselves so that we can truly, it knocks down barriers. It just does.
Yes.
Yeah.
It does. It does.
You know, and Anthony Bourdain, that was one thing he was always really good at. He used food as a vehicle to sit down with people and have a conversation.
I agree. Trust me. I wish I could collaborate with him, but
I know.
But he has so much to offer to this world.
I know. It's such, so he was really, really good at that.
Yeah.
Really
exactly. Good. And he connected with people right away with like every walks of life
100%.
around the world.
Yeah. And it was because of food.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was an amazing thing. So thank you so much for this book and the work that you've done on it. And we wish you, great success with it. It's brand new. So have fun, like talking about it. And we'll do our part here to share this with everybody. And, if you buy this, if you listen to the podcast and you explore this book, be sure to get in touch with Rowena and tell you about the experience. I think it sounds like you're open to hearing those kinds of stories.
Absolutely. You can personally email me. I'm at rscherer@eat2explore.
Yeah.
First my initial and my last name at eat2explore. I love feedback. I love talking to customers.
Yeah.
And we're constantly trying to improve to make sure we serve our mission, which is to create global citizens through food and cultural learning.
Yeah. So what's the website they can reach you through? And then also can they connect you on social media?
Yes, it's all my social media handle is eat2explore. So it's EAT, the number 2, EXPLORE. On Facebook, in Instagram, all social media. And then on our website is literally eat2explore.com. So
very good. So I'll put all those in the show notes as well. So I always like to ask a question here as we're wrapping up, since we're here to talk about cookbooks. You obviously spend a lot of time in your kitchen. If you have any favorite cookbooks, if you'd like to share what those might be and what those books mean to you.
I have to say, I love all of Odo Lecter's book. I have all his cookbook. Now, it's not easy, especially all the spices and little things that he put in his recipes. It's a challenge. But once you learn the basic skills of to the taste of the world, that will be your next level, advanced level. And again, it's about the world taste, right? It's Middle East, but yet it's not. It's so much more.
So I'll link to some of his books in the show notes as well. They are next level, but that's kind of the next when you cook a lot and you're ready for a new challenge. No reason to be afraid. There's plenty of cookbooks at that intermediate or advanced level that can lead you just as easily through those recipes as a cookbook like yours would lead people through the basics of starting. It's just a whole different thing. And then the funny thing is once you do learn it, I think it can easily become part of what you make all the time.
Agreed.
I have an Indian, we have a grocery store, you can get the cheese for Indian, the spinach dish, saag paneer. So I had an Indian cookbook, and the first couple times I made it, I followed their process exactly, duplicated it, turned out great. I think it's a really fun dish to make. And now if I make it now, it's like I just have to refer to it for a few things. It's almost like become, so second nature to know what to put in next. And also how maybe to cut back on something a little bit if I want to add a little bit more of something else. But
right. It's your version.
Exactly. And then, now it's just something I make. It's like, put it in the rotation and we have it. And I love getting carry out. We don't do it a ton, but when you can prepare something like that in your own kitchen, you really don't have to. And it uses frozen spinach. I mean, chopped frozen spinach.
Super easy. Super easy.
And that's maybe you buy a 10-ounce bags, 20-ounce bags might be $3 worth of frozen spinach.
Exactly.
And then the cheese and then the spices. Yep. And if you do it a lot, the spices, like you mentioned, maybe would use them over and over again. Yeah. I do think investment in ingredients sometimes is a little bit of a barrier for people, and I totally can understand that. But some spice shops here in Cincinnati at the Findlay Market, they'll sell you a small quantity of, say, za'atar. You just need a little bit, and he'll measure out a little bit and put it in a bag and give it to you. Almost feels illegal, but he'll maybe charge you 50 cents and you get this spice.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's not always,
Well, it's not always. It's sometimes hard to find, but I think trying it first before you invest in a big bottle is always important. Yeah. And if you like it, then you can always have that in your pantry.
Yeah, I agree about that. Don't buy the big, huge bottle until you're sure it's something that you want to really use. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, it's been great fun, Rowena, to have you on the show. Thank you again for the work that you're doing and coming to talk to us about your book. I wish you nothing but the best with all the promotion. Have fun meeting all the people. And I hope you hear some great stories about people who start to taste the world through your cookbook.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. Again, all the links can be found in the show notes at www.cookbooklove.co. And if you are interested in writing a cookbook of your own, please check out the free cookbook writing masterclass called How to Get Paid to Write a Cookbook. It is designed specifically for food or nutrition experts, and you can check that out at www.cookbookwritersacademy.com/free. So that's it for today's episode of the Cookbook Love podcast. This is your host, Maggie Green. And until next time, have a great day and keep loving your cookbooks.
Thanks for listening to the Cookbook Love podcast. You can find out more information at www.cookbooklove.co.